can start. Just a second. So are you seeing the presentation?
Yeah.
Full mode now?
Yes, it's okay.
Okay, great. So hi everyone. So as Thibault said, I'm João Santos, and today I'll be talking about part of my PhD, and the main focus was to try and solve these missing puzzles about how phytoplankton species are actually contributing to the mercury cycling. So for this presentation, I will do you a short introduction. I know all of you already know about mercury, but we never know who might be want to join. So I try to do a short introduction, and then I will present you two main works of my PhD. So moving on, so uh, what is the motivation of this work, and why do we care about phytoplankton? And in my case of my PhD, I had a special focus on diatoms. And for example, I start my defense actually with this question. What is the relationship between, for example, sushi, mercury, and phytoplankton? I know that you already know this, but most of the people, they are not aware of these uh, concepts. And this is very important because, as you can see in the left, there is a recent study that has found out high levels of metal mercury, organic in this case, in fish, and we are actually consuming a lot of fish. And with the trendy of sushi consumption, it's sometimes raising concerning levels. For example, here in Switzerland last year, there was a news that came out with a monitoring showing that the tuna being sold in the supermarket were with levels above the threshold. So this is important, and this is always uh, very crucial to understand and monitor, and so on. So moving forward, so you know that phytoplankton is located in the base of the food web, and therefore they are basically the aspirators. So they accumulate all kind of things, including mercury. And we have different types of mercury. There is the inorganic form and the organic form, and they can take it, bioaccumulate it, and so on. So it is very important to understand these interactions to predict, for example, these transfers of mercury into the food web. And this was, in this case, it's not easy anymore, uh, one of the main motivations of my PhD. So moving forward, so mercury emissions. So mercury, as you know, is one of the most hazardous heavy metals in the environment, and it's released in the atmosphere by anthropogenic and also natural sources. And once it's in the atmosphere, and here is the tricky part, we know, I hope you all know already this, it can travel for up to 1 year in the atmosphere, and it can, for example, be uh, originated in one country, but it will deposit in another country, which is not producing or working with any type of mercury whatsoever. And of course, it is alarming because in the past decades, there was an increase of these global emissions by a factor of 2 to 15 times more, which disrupted the mercury biogeochemical cycle. So anyway, moving forward, these levels led to the creation of the Minamata Convention of Mercury, and this, of course, has a specific goal, which is monitor, regulate, and control mercury usage. But now going to the science itself, this didn't change. Okay, so what is mercury in the aquatic system? So mercury in the atmosphere, as I mentioned, can travel through 1 year, and then it will be deposited in the aquatic system through wet or dry deposition. And of course, also there is the exchanges uh, between atmosphere and water, which will have difference between the elemental mercury present in the gaseous form and the dissolved elemental mercury. In the surface waters, several processes can occur. We have dissolved elemental mercury that can be, for example, revolatilized back to atmosphere or further oxidized into inorganic mercury. And there are lots of different types of transformations. We have biological transformations, we have chemical transformations. In the abiotic transformations, we have also the light, which is one of the main sources. And so there are lots of players and reactions occurring simultaneously. And this is very difficult to assess when we are, for example, in the field to pinpoint a transformation. And of course, if we go in deeper parts, we have the prokaryotes, where they are the main responsible for the biological transformations. And for example, here in this webinar, sorry, you are mostly focused on this type of organisms. Now going back to the surface, we have the phytoplankton communities, the plankton, but we are going to focus in the phytoplankton. And we know these organisms are known to affect mercury speciation and bioavailability, and therefore they are known to play a crucial role in the mercury in the trophic chain. Lastly, we have lots of different types of factors that control this speciation, bioavailability. And for example, we have the organic matter, we have anions, cations, pH, among many others. Now moving forward to the question is, what do we know about the planktonic assemblage and more precisely the phytoplankton species? So here we have a scheme of a paper that we actually wrote it with Thibaut, that is also here. And here we try to compile a summary. The paper has already a few years. There is now more things, but what do we know about phytoplankton? So we know they are directly involved in for example, the complexation of mercury species outside because they release a lot of thiol compounds. There are recently a study that showed the methylation, and actually 2 studies, because today I will present you a second one. And also there are studies showing reduction and so on. So we know things about phytoplankton, but this information is scattered. Either it's focused in fresh organisms, marine organisms, model organisms, and then we can even discuss a little about the model organisms, because these organisms are being continuous cultural in a laboratory, and they are not fully represented as an organism from a natural environment anymore, and so on. So we have many questions. So to do this and moving forward, otherwise I will be speaking a lot. I'm known to like to speak a lot. We have selected diatoms, in this case Cyclotella mindgeniana. And why diatoms? Because this is one of the biggest groups of phytoplankton species. So they are very important, and they alone, as you can see in the bulb, they are responsible for 20% of the total carbon cycle on Earth. So this is quite a big group, not this organism alone, but the group of diatoms. And they are the only organism on the planet with cell walls composed by opaline silica. And this is very typical for diatoms, and it's a characteristic that it's known. So now moving forward to our questions, otherwise we will not move forward. So here I will present you only the work that I've done on transformations. And what we want to know is how diatoms affect the speciation and bioavailability. Although today I will be talking more about speciation. So to start, here we have a general overview of the potential transformations that phytoplankton are involved on. Of course, there is one there that you might be wondering. I never heard about this, and this is why we are here today. And starting with the inorganic and metal mercury. So what can, in this case, Cyclotella munginiana do to inorganic mercury and metal mercury? So this was our first big question. And to do this, we have this question, and also this is already published. It was recently published in Environment Pollution. In case you are interested and want to read more about the work afterward, please take a picture and or Google it, and it will appear. So how do we do this? So our first question was, can they do methylation and demethylation? So as you can see in the left side, we have this design. So we have our organism, and we want to see many things. We start with the first question, which is methylation and demethylation. And here we use a somehow innovative process because we use double isotope spiking, and we use 3 nanomolars of 199 inorganic mercury with 0.3 nanomolars of 201 metal mercury. So here we use the environmental relevant concentrations, and we use these concentrations, but this spike together. So this is a very important topic. The concentrations were at the same time spiked. And we use the cells with the initial cell density of 1 power to the 6, and we collect time points. Just for the ones with more curiosity, this image shows the layout that was done. So we actually pumped air continuously in the system. I will explain later why, because the second work will explain why I had to do this. And we actually clean the air with gold traps to remove any type of mercury contamination from the air, and alongside with the air filter to remove the potential biological contamination. And how did we collect the samples? So we collect several types of samples. This took years of work, many years of discarded work, but we collect briefly the whole system. So literally sample the flasks and acidify. So we have the extracellular medium plus the cells, and either we have the cell fraction and dissolved fraction, and this is collected by a simple centrifugation. And in the cell fraction, we did a subcellular fractionation because we want to understand that if we detect any type of transformation, we want to go a little further and try to understand if these transformations were occurring in a specific area of the cell. And in this case, of course, we didn't do more layers because the time was not in our favor. Just for you to understand how the isotopic work works. So we have here the methylation and the methylation. In blue, we have the mercury we put in the system, and then we measure all these species at the same time. If the pink species appear, means that this was derivated from the blue spike, because we didn't have 199 metal mercury or 201 inorganic mercury in our system. If you have doubts, you can interrupt me. We can do an informal presentation. So moving forward to the results. So here we have the methylation results. And today I'm just showing you the cell fraction, the cytosolic fraction, and the debris fraction. There is too many results, so let's go straight to the point. And how was this calculated? So it's very simple. We took the exposure result, we subtract to the control because there is always a signal in the control. And therefore, to be really sure that this comes from our for the transformation itself, we did this subtraction, and then we divided by the initial species of 199 inorganic mercury. So 199 inorganic mercury is the original species, and if it's transformed, it will be the 199 methyl mercury. So, conclusion, there is no methylation detected in these organisms, and this was expected. Nobody so far has seen methylation by phytoplankton species, and if it occurs, is most likely due to secondary products that might be influencing these secondary transformation. So moving to the demethylation, and here we have very interesting results. Briefly, the methylation calculation is the same principle. So we have the 201 methyl mercury spiked at T0, which is the lower part, and then we calculated based on what was appearing in the each time point. As you can see, we have results for the cell fraction, which corroborate very well with the debris fraction. And this somehow there is a trend increasing over time, and the results show a clear demethylation, although at a very low level of demethylation. But these results are very interesting because then if we look at the globality of in the environmental, this small demethylation might have a huge impact in the global mercury cycle. So moving forward to the other process, we also tested the reduction. This has already been shown in other species, but it has never been in Cyclotella managiniana. And since we were testing the capacity, we want also to assess its potential. We also checked other transformations, but here we are just showing the ones that we got very good results. And briefly, the same principle, there was no isotopes used here. We use closed reactors. So basically, as you can see in this image, it's a similar system as before. We have a PEMP. In this case, we have to control the flow of air entering because since we have the gold traps outside, we need to have a low flow. Otherwise, it will not work for the mercury to be properly trapped in the gold traps. And then what we did is we test light versus dark condition, same initial cellular concentration. We have one time point, and we use either 1.9 nanomolar of inorganic mercury or 0.32, which is more or less similar to the previous concentrations. And we also test biotic versus abiotic and also light versus dark. And what we did is we start the system, we have the system running, and only after everything was running at the same conditions, same flow, everything okay, we inject our mercury samples inside the flasks. So what were the results? We got inorganic mercury reduction. The results were very interesting. And here we have the equation used is very simple, the same principle, taking the initial minus the purgeable one. So how much we spiked and how much we measure in the gold trap. And the results show that there is a clear biotic inorganic mercury reduction compared with abiotic. And more interesting was that this reduction seemed, at least statistically, to be not to be independent of light. And these results are interesting because they corroborate with previous studies. There are not a lot, but there are 3 studies at least that have shown that this reduction is independent of light. Now, looking at the methyl mercury, because since we measure the methylation, we want to see, okay, we saw the methylation, can we see this reduction like a cascade of reactions, but unfortunately we could not see it. However, for your note, we just did a 3-hour point, and in the other experiment we did 72 hours. So we believe that this is not enough to see the results. And now with the summary, you'll understand why. So what are our summary of results? As you can see here, we found out inorganic mercury reduction and the methylation. However, we can see that the rate, the speed of these reactions are almost 100 times different. So the methylation is extremely slow, and therefore it explains why we didn't see this inorganic mercury reduction when we spike metal mercury after 3 hours. We will need much more time. And here we add these singlet oxygens because there is a paper published 2 years ago in Nature that shows phytoplankton demethylation, and they point out that this is the most likely player in the demethylation reaction. So now moving to our second hypothesis. So we answered the first, which was, can they transform inorganic and metal mercury? But then there is another one that not a lot of people thought about it, which is, can phytoplankton be involved in the accumulation and oxidation of elemental mercury? Just to let you know that this is not like a genius idea. This was actually come out because we had some contaminations, and through the puzzle solving and took quite almost 2 years of repeating, we managed to figure out where it came from, and actually it was nice because we managed to get out some interesting findings. So to start, this work is divided in two. So I will start now with the first one, and this is already published too. You can see it, and I will explain how we did our first steps. So our first steps was, can phytoplankton species be involved in this accumulation or oxidation? And for that, we select 4 species. We pick the two main groups of phytoplankton. There are more, but we have these organisms at N, and so forth. So that for that, we choose Chlamydomonas reinhardti and Haematococcus pluvialis as the green algae representatives. And as the diatoms, we use the same Cyclotelum nugeniana and Navicula pelliculosa. And how did we do our first screening? So it was very simple. We incubated all the cultures in an atmosphere with 7.7 micrograms of meter cubic. This is considered a contaminated scenario. It's not natural environmental levels, but here we want to understand if we see the results, and for that we need high concentration. And as you can see, after 5 days, we have accumulation of total mercury. And in this first experiment, we did not differentiate between purgeable mercury, which is the dissolved elemental mercury, and the inorganic mercury, but we rather try to understand how we see a retention of mercury. And what we saw was a clear accumulation in all species treated. And since we saw this, we say, no, we need more experiments. We need to figure out better. So for that, we did a similar experiment, but now we copulated with contaminated atmosphere versus a normal atmosphere, so ambient air. And we incubated our species during 6 days. And here we have the results of the cells. So we separate, and here I'm just showing you the cellular fraction because it's more interesting. In the paper, you have all the different types of fractions, but just to show, we could see a significant increase in all species. And even more interesting is that if you can see the green algae had a 10 times more accumulation compared with the diatoms. And we were like, okay, but why is this? Maybe it's they grow faster, but in this case, we we divided by cells, so it should not be the cells. And we somehow, sorry, it's not this slide, that's the next slide. Sorry, so before going to why there is this 10 times fold concentration, we also checked the abiotic, the famous abiotic treatments, because as you know, when you work with mercury, most of the results are always because of the abiotic. So here, as you can see, we have the abiotic in the contaminated and the ambient atmosphere. So Ca contaminated, Aa ambient atmosphere. And we can see that there is indeed an increase of mercury in the contaminated versus the Aa. However, it does not explain the concentration when the cells are present. And now going to why there is this difference between green algae and diatoms, we somehow try to understand it, and we found a correlation or relationship between the surface area and the volume of these different algae with the amount of mercury accumulated. Of course, this is just our initial speculation. Of course, we need to do further research to really understand these results. But this is very interesting because, for example, there was a study, and there is a gap there, but it's okay, where they show that lichens, they were associated with also the growth rate and the surface area, because lichens are also composed with algae in their structure. So now that I show these results, we could see that there is a clear or somehow evidence that algae somehow are related with this accumulation, at least in a contaminated scenario. But we did not quantify the dissolved elemental mercury in the different species, or we didn't see the oxidation in the exposure media. And for that, we did more refined work. And this work is also published. It was published last month, where we selected two of these species. We select green algae Chlamydomonas and Cyclotella, as makes sense because it was my organism of the PhD. And we tried to understand better what we saw in these results. So very briefly, I will try to be brief. I don't know if I still have time. So here we have the design again, and here we play with two scenarios: an open system similar to previously, but also a closed system where we close our reactors and we inject gaseous mercury, and with that we control every scenario, and then we analyze our samples. So to starting with the open air reactors, so we call it OAR. Very briefly, we put inside an incubator contaminated with the same concentration as previously, but this time we did a time series to understand if this was linear, not linear, and we also use biotic and abiotic conditions. So what is the novelty here? So we collect the samples, but here we also separate the dissolved fraction from the oxidized fraction. And this is obtained by simple purging our samples during 15 minutes. This is applied in several studies. There are some here cited. And basically, if the elemental mercury is in the system, it will purge out and it will get out from the system. And therefore, afterwards, we have mercury NP, which means non-purgeable, and is considered oxidized form. At least this is what is in the literature and what is being used so far. And the purgeable fraction basically was the sample direct acidified minus the sample purged and then acidified, and then the difference means that it was what we lose to the system. Just to give you an overview, if you have questions, please give them. And so what were our results? So here we have Cyclotella and Chlamydomonas, and we have the mercury system, so cells plus medium. Then we have this, which is dissolved fraction, we have a mercury cell, which is the cells, and all these NP is a non-purgeable fraction, so oxidized mercury. And then the mercury zero is the mercury that we calculated between the whole system minus the whole system purges. So the fraction that we take it out from the system. So as we can see, over the time, there was an increase of mercury in the cells, but not in the purgeable mercury or the dissolved fraction. Then we did a mass balance, and the results were also similar, and they show that this mercury is increasing in the cells, which was very interesting. And to another type of example, we could see this trend over time and clearly in both organisms. Of course, again, if you notice to the axis, the y-axis, the green algae is 10 times higher than the diatom, and this goes again in accordance to the previous study. So now moving to the last part of the study. So we saw this, and we want to understand then now, okay, but what are the mechanisms? What is behind this? So for that, we had to control more our scenario, and we select a closed reactor, so a slurry closed, hermetically closed, of course. And we play with two scenarios. First, we use two type of concentrations. Here, we even increase more the concentration, and here it was just to understand the capacity, if there was a saturation point or not. Not in terms of environmental relevance, because in this way we need to actually go down. This is the next steps. And then we also played with other scenarios, which is this the biological mediated, it's direct, it's the algae doing this, or if they are dead, are we seeing this happening? And also, of course, the famous light and dark exposure, because we need to understand if this is photosynthetically mediated or not. So, and these bold letters, they will appear in the graphs. I will explain. So, very briefly, we are finishing. To understand how we do this, so again, we have closed flasks, and we inject our samples. And here we have all the indication how we did these results. And after the incubation, we had to take out these samples. And this is like similar to the work done, but in this case, we had to do another purge, but in this case, we want to collect the gaseous mercury that are in each flask or not. If it's not in the flask, means that it's oxidized. Of course, we did many treatments, many conditions, many controls, because this is very complicated, but in a way, everything was a success, let's say. So now moving to the results, so we are reaching to the end. Here we have the results of the oxidation between the different treatments. And in the left graph, we have Cyclotella and green algae, Chlamydomonas reinhartii, and the conditions are 6 and 12. So 6 means that it's the first concentration, and 12 means it's the highest concentration. And here we just compare between the cells alive and the abiotic. So we want to understand directly if we could see differences. And we saw differences, they were clear, but even more enunciated in the green algae, the Chlamydomonas reinhartii. And something very interesting was that we didn't see a clear distinction between the concentration treatments. So between the 6 and 12, they were similar in terms of results. Then we looked at the right graph, B, and here we were trying to understand if light, dark influenced, and we could not see any results. And here only the concentration of 6 micrograms per meter cubic was used. It's a little confusing because the results are a lot. I try to minimize because it's a lot of to digest, but basically what we can take from here is that In Cyclotella miniginiana, we could not see differences. In green algae, we saw that in light, NEA is not alive and dark alive. The results were similar. And if we compare with graph A with 6 alive, the results were the same, which means that there are different mechanisms by the different algae. And this is very well highlighted in the next graph, where we can see these results, but better shown. So here we have just the total mercury. And in the left graph, it's the same what we saw before, but with a comparison with the control. So we can see that there is a clear mercury oxidation. And then if we look at the right graph, we have only 6 concentration, light alive, dark alive, and light Na is not alive. And we could see that in the green algae in the right side, the results were similar in all the conditions, while in the left side, in Cyclotella miniginiana, graph D, we could see a clear difference between light alive and the other conditions. So right here, we see that different organisms, they have different mechanisms. And this also can explain perhaps why we are seeing 10 times fold difference between green algae and diatoms. So, the summary of the work, because this is very complicated. So with this image, I think it's easier to understand. I could just show you this, but then I could not show you the graphs that I took so much time to do. So here we have the 2 experiments. In the left, we have the open air reactors. And here was the 72-hour experiment. And we could see that there is oxidation, and you can see that the oxidation constant that we calculated is 10 times higher or in green algae than in diatom. And when we look at the right side, we could see that in green algae, there was always an accumulation, while in the diatom only was seen an accumulation in alive cells in light conditions. Of course, here there are something that we have not shown, which is the adsorbed fraction. So we did not distinguish between the intracellular and the cellular, because actually we tried to do that, but our cysteine was contaminated and everything was discarded. But we tried. We are aware that there is this missing point, although in Cyclotella miniginiana, since there was no accumulation, for example, in the other conditions, we are sure or somehow sure that it's not occurring in the membrane. Otherwise, it will be seen in the other conditions with the dead cells and the no light cells. Anyway, moving forward and to finalize. So what are the transformations of inorganic mercury and metal mercury done by Cyclotella? We could see that they can do the methylation, and they can indeed reduce inorganic mercury. And this was more or less 100 times difference in terms of the speed or the rate, as whatever you want to call it. And then our second question was, can phytoplankton be involved with elemental mercury oxidation or accumulation? And the answer is yes, but we don't know yet how exactly. And what is next? You might be asking. So there are many things. And here, for instance, we can talk about this, which is what are the mechanisms behind this? Is this enzymatical mediated? Is not enzymatical mediated? It's just a secondary process. So there are many questions that we have. And yeah, this is basically our next steps. And I want to acknowledge all the previous team between Geneva and Po. And that's it. Thank you for being here today.
Thank you so much, Joao. It was really nice to to have a small overview of your work.
It's small, yeah. I just showed a little.
Oh, thank you. I think it was well synthesized. So now the floor is open. If you have any question for Joao, don't hesitate to just turn on your mic and ask the question. If not, I will just ask something to Joao because I'm a little bit curious. When you talk about the open air reactor, which is contaminated, how did you do that?
So we have a incubator with contaminated, and we
Okay,
measure the levels of mercury
okay,
over time. And so we use two types of methods to monitoring. We use ICP-MS and we use uh, how do you say the MERPASS, the passive sampler. So we use two methods over the experiment period
uh-huh.
within different sampling points, and we had the results were similar between that, and we use that. But it's very difficult to have a measure of elemental mercury concentration, even in the closed reactors, because it's very complicated. When we are working with gases and concentration, it can vary even to do the experiments when we are taking for example, the gaseous elemental mercury. If you end up touching the syringe and warming the syringe because of the Henry law constant, the concentration will be totally different. So you think you are injecting a good volume of mercury and you are not. So yeah, it's not easy. We did uh, several tries. And yeah, that's it. Now we need to go lower, actually. But I think it's interesting because you remember when we start working together, there was always this saying that, and we discussed this, like how can be mercury in our experiments if we are washing the flasks, the tips, is molecule, is pure reagents, everything is clean, and then we always have mercury in the control. And we never figure out why. I mean, makes sense, but maybe there is something here that we can explore more and might explain some interesting field gaps that exist.
Yeah, I remember how it was this situation. And I just have another question about this oxidation, because now, of course, it's just the beginning of the work on this oxidation. But can you imagine or make some hypothesis of what will be the oxidation if you have some organic matter in the in your system?
Oof. Uh, that's a good question. I honestly don't remember. But the thing is that yeah, gaseous mercury is tricky because it doesn't behave the same way as the other species. Like in organic mercury, we know it will automatically adsorb to the tiles, and but elemental mercury, it's a special one. Let's say even for the uptake, the transport. When you are reading about an organic metal mercury, you know it absorbs, it shine, but the properties of gaseous mercury are very unique. So I don't remember honestly, but I think it will not bind.
Yeah, but it could be interesting to see what happens if you have some such ligands also in the
Yeah,
system.
no, no. There is so many questions from here that I mean, for your group, yes, because you focus in organic matter for sure. But I think the key question here now is there are three main questions for the work of oxidation. Okay, the is how does this behave with lower concentrations? So this is more tricky because when you are working with the environment concentration, it's very difficult. How do you know it's not the air or
Yeah.
not? And then do you have a signal or not? That's why maybe you need to use isotopes, and this is even more complicated. Uh, and then is this enzymatically or not? This is a very interesting question. Like, it's like the methylation. It's like we know that bacteria they do this, but in the case of the algae, we are not seeing this. But we see also that, for example, the methylation is very low rate, which can be an induction or let's say, I'll say if it's so low, might be a secondary reaction, not the organism that is doing this. But in the case of gaseous mercury, with a high concentration, we see a high accumulation. So might be somehow mediated by the cell. But yeah, we need to. This is just postulations. It's
No,
you need to test. You need to
yeah.
hypothesize and
No, but
maybe you know.
it's nice. It's nice. I think someone has a question. I think yeah. Please go ahead.
Hi, hi, Joao. Thank you for your
Hey,
nice, a long time no see.
yes,
Um, it was super amazing the amount of work you made, lots of lab and analysis of amazing.
yeah, thank you.
And I have a question related to maybe it's a methodological question because I was interested on knowing in the last accumulation experiment, how do you make sure that in the comparison of the two organisms that you are comparing the two algae, how do you make sure that, for instance, in the last summary you make, the one of the algae is not incorporating, is not accumulating mercury in under dark conditions? How?
Yes,
Because I imagine you can have the two, well, the bias and so on, and you have a culture and that, but how do you know that it's if mercury is inside or not? Like you break the, how, what do you do exactly?
yes. So how do we know this? So what we did is we did the experiments with the algae. Uh, let me show you first this. Okay, so here we have the algae. I don't know if you can see my. Oh my God,
Yes,
I
yes,
don't.
I can see it.
Can you see the thing? Okay, here
Ah,
we have the algae dark. Here they are. So different conditions. So this is a biotic. So this is dark alive. This is not alive. So it killed the algae, and then we always try to do all the experiments and at the same time, same condition, and in the same batch because this is the difficulty. Because since I was mentioned that there might be this difference with the gaseous mercury, and if it's too hot or if it's too cold, there will be variations. Everything was done at the same time. It's very difficult. That's why there is, for example, if you see the paper, some controls, there is only two replicates because there was no more space in the system to do this. So with these, we collect then the different conditions, so treatments, live, dead, and dark, and then we collect. Oh my God, it's Zoom. It's difficult. What we did is where it is. Here. So we collect the different. So we open the flasks and we collect a sample for the whole system, and then the rest we of course we weight everything. The flask, how much volume you. This is normal for mercury. You need to always weight your samples, and we have we centrifuge. We have the cell and we have the dissolve. Then, as the usual, you have the dissolved fraction. You have the cellular acidification, and with that we have the values. And of course, we purge the samples. So this was done in both experiments. And we got the values. And the values are these ones. So here is the best graph that shows very well. So we have, attends, I will put again try, I cannot anymore. Anyway, you see here, wait, I think I can show you my point. Pointer options. Okay, can you see the pointer? Yes. So here we have the control. So in the right is always the control, and here we have the treatment. And what we see is that in Cyclotella, these correspond to alive and light. This correspond to dark condition, and this correspond when we kill the cells. And what we see is there is no differences between the control. So we did batches at the same time without ejecting elemental mercury, and the results are the same. So we inject mercury here, elemental mercury, and here we didn't inject different flasks, and in the end, the results are the same. So there is no oxidized mercury. So if there is no oxidized mercury, means that all the mercury, and this was measured, of course, all the mercury was trapped in the gold trap. So we actually measure the gold trap. I don't know if we have the results here, but in the paper, at least in the supplementary material, I think I have actually. No, I don't have it here. Sorry. We have the amount of mercury that we collect, measure in the gold trap in match to what we spiked, and with this we are sure that this happened. So here there is oxidation, but again, like I was saying, in the case of the green algae, we are not sure if this elemental mercury oxidize is occurring in the membrane or inside. So we don't have information. But in the case of the Cyclotella, since that the results show that I showed did not show any accumulation or a significant accumulation in these conditions, means that it's not occurring in the cell membrane. Because if it was a cell membrane, it will attach directly. It doesn't need the algae to be with light or not. It will be. So this is what we could extrapolate. Of course, now next steps is check the membrane, maybe block some potential absorption points and try to figure out, and that's it. I hope I could answer your
Yeah,
question.
totally. Thank you so much.
Thank you for this question. I think we still have time for one or two quick questions if you have. If someone has, don't hesitate to ask Joao. I don't think. I mean, I don't have.
No, it's okay. If somebody has a question, you can always email me.
I can ask a question.
Oh, yes, please, Marisa. Yes.
Hey, thanks for the great presentation.
Thank
You
you.
covered this already in your mass balance slide, but I guess I was thinking about how do your oxidation results compare to like typical mercury 2 oxidation in the ocean, specifically in an upwelling region? Like, do you think that phytoplankton could be the main oxidation pathway in those areas of the ocean?
Yeah, that's a good question. Okay, so there are two things. One is what I was mentioned, that we need to first measure if at lower concentration we are seeing this. And second is that yes, because there is this paper of Martin Giskra about the modulation of elemental mercury from the atmosphere to the water, and there was something missing. There was some amount of oxidation that was not explained by by the current modeling, and this was in the surface area where phytoplankton is. So I believe that this might be something very interesting. Of course, we need to test it out, and we use freshwater organisms. So again, we need now to go to marine organisms and then try to simulate what we are seeing, for example, in the Atlantic, and then replicate in laboratory with a similar organism and try to do this merge. But yeah, I think there is something there.
Very cool. Thank you.
Thank you.
So thank you, Joao. If no one else has a question, I think we can finish this seminar. So thank you for your presence, all of you, and thank you, Joao, again for this
Yeah.
seminar. It was really cool to see you, to hear you, and to see the result of this hard work.
It's nice to talk about it.
Yeah, and I hope I will see you soon.
I realize that you never forgot your PhD because I haven't touched this in months, and it's everything there.
You
It's
keep it under
impressive.
the skin for the life, I think.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Anyway.
thank you so much, and bye everyone, and see
Yeah.
you